Crete, May 1941. 8,000 German paratroopers are falling from the sky, and every single one of them is unarmed, not because of enemy fire, not because of a malfunction, because someone somewhere decided their weapons should fall in separate canisters. By the time their boots hit the ground, British rifles were already aimed, 4,000 dead in 10 days. But from that massacre, from that single decision that killed thousands, came a weapon so far ahead of its time that the Americans reverse-engineered it after the war and put its soul into their own guns. The man who built it never became famous. You've never heard his name, but you've heard of everything he inspired. To understand why the FG-42 existed at all, you have to understand one of the most catastrophic decisions in the history of airborne warfare. And it starts not with the weapon, but with the jump. By 1940, the Fallschirmjäger, German paratroopers, were the most elite soldiers in the world. They had seized the Belgian fortress of Eben-Emael with 78 men in under 24 hours. They had dropped into the Netherlands and seized bridges before the enemy could react. Airborne warfare was Germany's signature move, fast, violent, and completely unexpected. But there was a problem baked into every single one of those operations, a problem every paratrooper knew about, accepted, and quietly dreaded. When a Fallschirmjäger jumped from a Junkers 52 transport aircraft, he jumped with almost nothing: a pistol, a knife, maybe a few grenades. His primary weapon was packed into a separate canister pushed out of the aircraft alongside him. It drifted down separately, and when the paratrooper hit the ground, he had one job before anything else: find the canister. Because without it, he was a soldier with a pistol in a country that wanted him dead. In Norway and the Netherlands, this had worked. The resistance was disorganized. Soldiers could usually reach their canisters in time. Dangerous, imperfect, but nobody changed it. Then came Crete. The island was held by British, Australian, New Zealand, and Greek forces, roughly 40,000 men who knew the Germans were coming and had prepared accordingly. When the Fallschirmjäger jumped on the morning of May 20th, they dropped into something completely different: organized, waiting, and furious. The first wave was slaughtered in the air. Men were shot before they reached the ground. Those who landed alive sprinted toward canisters, while British soldiers ran toward the same canisters from the other direction. In some drop zones, the canisters landed in enemy hands, or in the sea, or in terrain so rough they couldn't be found. 4,500 German paratroopers killed in 10 days, the highest loss rate of any German airborne operation in the entire war. The cost was so catastrophic that Hitler personally told General Kurt Student that the days of large airborne operations were over. Germany never attempted a major parachute assault again. But while the generals were absorbing the shock of Crete, one engineer sat down and asked a question that changed everything. What if the paratrooper never had to be unarmed in the first place? His name was Louis Stange. He worked for Rheinmetall-Borsig, one of Germany's major weapons manufacturers. And in 1941 he was given the most difficult design brief in the history of small arms engineering. Build a single weapon a paratrooper can carry in his hands from the moment he jumps. Compact enough for a parachute descent, powerful enough to replace the standard infantry rifle at 600 meters, capable of fully automatic fire, light enough to carry all day through mountains and rubble. Pause and think about what that actually means. In 1941, armies had rifles and they had machine guns. A rifle was accurate but fired single shots. A machine gun could suppress entire positions but weighed 20 pounds or more, needed a crew, and burned through ammunition faster than one man could carry. Nobody had ever successfully combined both functions in a single weapon light enough for one man. The engineering challenges were considered, by most people in the field, essentially unsolvable. Stange solved them anyway. The FG-42, Fallschirmjägergewehr 42, was unlike anything built before it. The first problem was recoil. Automatic weapons climbed the muzzle upward with each shot, spraying bullets into the sky. Stange aligned the stock barrel and receiver in a straight horizontal line. Recoil drove straight back into the shoulder instead of rotating the muzzle skyward. A soldier firing bursts could actually control where they went. The second problem was rate of fire. Stange built a system that fired at two different rates depending on mode: slow and deliberate for aimed shots at distance, fast for suppression at close range. The rotating bolt mechanism that achieved this had never been widely implemented in a combat weapon before. The third problem was weight. The FG-42 fired the same full-power 7.92mm cartridge as the standard German rifle, yet weighed just over 9 pounds loaded. For a weapon of its capability, that was remarkable. And it had a bayonet. Because Stange understood something the specifications never asked for. A paratrooper landing alone in the dark might eventually need to fight in silence. What Stange built in 1942 wasn't just a solution to Crete, it was a blueprint for everything that came after. Every modern assault rifle working to balance accuracy, automatic fire, and lightweight is built on principles the FG-42 established first. Let me put you on that island for a moment. It is May 21st, 1941. You are a Fallschirmjäger, and you jumped yesterday into what felt like the end of the world. Half your unit is dead or scattered. You found your canister. You found your rifle. But the man beside you wasn't that lucky. He fought the first hour with a pistol and 2 grenades. He is still alive, which means he is remarkable. Now the British are counterattacking from the village of Maleme, 40 of them, moving through low scrub toward your position. You have a bolt-action Kar 98K. 1 shot. Work the bolt. 1 more shot. Against 40 men in open ground, that is not enough. You fire. You cycle the bolt. You fire again. They are still coming. Now imagine instead you are holding an FG-42. 1 aimed shot at the lead man at 300 meters. Watch him drop. 2 more in 3 seconds. They slow, go to ground, look for cover. And when 2 of them rush your position at close range, you switch to automatic. The weapon that was a rifle 30 seconds ago is now something else entirely. The rush stops. That is the gap the FG-42 was designed to close. Not the gap between rifles and machine guns as categories. The gap between what one man could do alone and what one man needed to do to survive. But here is the part most people never hear. And it changes how you see this weapon entirely. The FG-42 was too good. Stange had designed a masterpiece, and masterpieces are expensive. Each one required hundreds of precision-machined components and manufacturing time that Germany by 1942 could not afford to spend on a weapon issued to a small elite force Hitler had already decided would never jump again. The Wehrmacht wanted nothing to do with it. Too complicated, too expensive, too specialized. Production was limited to roughly 7,000 rifles. 7,000. In a war where Germany produced over 14 million Kar 98K rifles, the FG-42 was a ghost present in just enough numbers to prove what it could do, never enough to change what the war was. At Monte Cassino in 1944, a handful of paratroopers with FG-42s held positions against Allied forces that outnumbered them by ratios that should have made resistance impossible, but there were never enough of them. And by 1944, the men who had survived Crete were a fading generation. Their replacements were younger, less trained, thrown into battles the original paratroopers would have considered suicidal. The FG-42 was in their hands. But hands are not enough when there are too few left. Germany surrendered in May 1945. American ordnance teams moved through captured weapons depots and found something they had heard about but rarely seen. The FG-42 was stripped, measured, tested, and studied by engineers who recognized they were looking at something that had gotten there before them. The M60 machine gun, standard American infantry weapon through Korea and Vietnam, drew directly from the FG-42 in its core mechanism. American soldiers carrying it through the jungles of Vietnam were carrying, in a very real sense, the inheritance of Louis Stange's work. The broader principle that one soldier should carry a weapon capable of both precision fire and automatic suppression became the foundation of every assault rifle that followed. The M16, the AK family, every modern infantry rifle was built on an argument the FG-42 made first. Louis Stange returned to civilian life after the war, worked in engineering, and died without becoming a household name in any country. 7,000 rifles, built for a force that would never jump again, by a man whose name nobody remembers, to solve a problem created by a decision that killed thousands of men on a rocky island in the Aegean Sea. But walk into any modern military and look at the rifle in the soldier's hands. Watch how it balances precision with firepower. See how one man carries it alone, without a crew, without a canister falling somewhere else. What you are seeing is the answer to a question asked over the bodies of 4,000 men on Crete in 1941. Louis Stange answered it first. 1943. Joe DiMaggio was having the worst year of his life. Nobody remembered his name. His rifle remembered everything.